Thank you, Marcus. Hello, everyone. My name is Evan Dexter. I was here last year with Clement Kwong, who's part of the NHL dev team. We had a blast last year, so pretty happy to come back. And I see a lot of familiar faces, so thank you guys for coming back. A couple of quick restrictions in terms of capture and what we can and cannot show coming out of today's event. Four quick things. First and foremost, in-game player ratings. Please do not capture any player ratings. Please do not capture any Hockey Ultimate Team player ratings as well, including Legends and Heroes. The NHL 3's campaign mode is fully playable. The full game is fully playable, I should say. But the NHL 3's campaign mode, please do not capture beyond the first two games of the first circuit. The reason for that is there are different bosses that appear throughout the campaign. We want to keep surprises intact for our players that play the campaign mode when the game comes out on September 15th. So you guys can play it as much as you want. You can go as far into it as you like, but please do not capture and post any actual gameplay from that. And then last but not least, mascot versus mascot gameplay. You can play it as much as you want. Please do not capture that as well. Does that make sense? Other than that, there's no NDA, there's no embargo, so you're allowed to post your gameplay capture, post your impressions, anything you like coming out of today as soon or as late as you like. So there's no need to wait for any specific date. And I think that is it in terms of restrictions. If you have any questions as you're playing and you need clarification on anything, please don't hesitate to ask. And then we'll get right into it. So I know based on the event last year, we have a lot of pretty hardcore fans here in Finland, which is awesome. Is there anybody here that would consider themselves not a hockey fan? What? Okay. Everybody else would consider themselves a pretty big hockey fan? Is that fair to say? Any big NHL specific fans? I like the shirt. You're automatically in the good books there. Cool. How many of you have been to a hockey game this year? Okay, that's good. And how many of you played the NHL 18 beta? Okay, we got a good crowd. Cool, so I'm gonna let Clement take it away, and we'll walk through about a 10-minute product overview, and then you guys can absolutely go nuts on the game and through interviews.
Yeah, well, we'll go through this boring stuff. I got the game up. So, thank you very much, Evan. I'm Clem. I see a bunch of familiar faces here. So thank you again for coming. I'm the lead producer working out of the Vancouver studio, so I'm very excited to be here. Sean Rammer was here last year, for some of you that remember. He was actually supposed to come on this trip, but had to make had last minute commitments, so he wasn't going to come. He sends his regards. So I am representing our entire team from Vancouver. So before I start, just to kick it off a little bit, obviously a lot of you have followed our franchise for a very long time. Starting with kind of 15, the transition from the previous generation consoles, first time on Xbox One and PS4. That was obviously a bit of a miss, and in terms of just the experiences that we weren't able to bring over from the previous generation console to the current one. And then spending 16 and 17 bring back the quality, the breadth and depth that our players are expecting. The gameplay innovation, the modes, the online depth and breadth, obviously EA Sports Hockey League as part of our core offering. So starting with 18, what we're looking at were things like, when you look at a 3-year roadmap, driving gameplay quality innovation is important, driving modes breadth and depth is important, and driving overall quality is very important for us. So where we started, I would say late last summer with consumer research, early concept and design was drawing inspiration from really the real world of hockey and what was going on there. I think for hockey fans in this room, last season was very eventful. Every night filled with highlight reel goals, young generation of players coming in and basically setting the world on fire. So that's where we kind of drew inspiration from the real NHL, the concept of and you talk to people around the NHL, around the business, around the game, they'll recognize that, hey, yeah, the game's getting younger, faster, driven by the Laines, Matthews, McDavids, obviously of the world. We're now seeing more creativity, more skill, and more speed every night. The game's getting faster with these young next generation of young superstars who are really leading their team. displaying not only offensive skill, but offensive skill, but doing it at top speed and making immediate impact with their teams day in and day out. So just a short clip.
But before you actually go there, sorry, one thing I forgot to mention, and I apologize for anybody that's filming right now. If you could please not film the presentation directly, and the reason being, not any of this content is hands off in terms of discussion. Everything here is coverable, but we do have a couple of videos in the presentation that include some real world footage that we're not allowed to have filmed and then released out. So if I can ask you please not to film the video footage that we have baked into the presentation, I appreciate that.
Cool. So just a short clip, starting with Wayne Gretzky, the great one, talking about the speed of the game.
Lost that.
All right. Hold that thought. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, we should probably do it off here.
Yeah, I think so.
The game is better because the players are better. They come along every so many years. They're the ones that carry the torch. He's got all the elements in terms of skating, hockey, IQ. You don't find a flaw. I mean, there's no flaw. Label a player a generational player is a huge level of expectation. First pick, Winnipeg Jets select, Buffalo select, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel. He is representative from the next wave.
So really with NHL 18, some of the goals that we had, some of the product goals that we had talked about heading into the year, and how we wanted to bring, you know, this brand new exciting brand of hockey to our fans, was really, you know, four things that was important to us from the beginning.
Just go your slide. Keep going. I'm just gonna try and fix the audio.
You know, one of the things obviously that's bread and butter for this franchise is gameplay innovation. So with, you know, new creative gameplay, being able to deliver the tools to our fans and players to pull off some of the moves that you just saw earlier. That is my younger daughter, by the way, in case you're wondering. The second thing was, you know, looking to build on new experiences. So obviously with game modes like Hockey Ultimate Team, EA Sports Hockey League, those are established modes that, you know, we have very core communities built around. But we also wanted to bring in a brand new experience, you know, that really enabled our players to use those tools, those gameplay tools that we'll be talking about, to display their skill and their creativity. So we'll talk about threes in a bit, but, you know, a lot of you have seen that in the beta already. And then third is the new league expansion, obviously, with Vegas Golden Knights coming in this year. That's a very big story, not only for hockey, but the sports world in general. That's you know, the first major pro sports franchise in Las Vegas. So very excited to have them in our game this year. And, you know, lastly, and perhaps maybe the most important one, is kind of the wrapper to bring it all together in terms of new ways to play multiplayer. You know, we'll talk about in a bit about it, but, you know, some of the most shareable, most memorable experiences, you know, in kind of sports video gaming. You know, we talk about NHL 94 a lot. We talk about kind of NBA Jam and playing together There was a group of us playing in here earlier as we were setting up, full 3v3 threes, and that was very different from even playing 1v1. So multiplayer is definitely an area where we want to kind of explore and connect, all those experiences together, whether you're sitting on the couch or playing online. Is the audio fixed?
No.
No?
But that's okay, I can speak to the videos once I'm ready.
Cool. Sorry about that, guys. So first we'll take a look at gameplay and some of the areas of focus that we put our efforts into this year. Really, when you look at gameplay, Ben and team have done a great job this year. We wanted to make sure you're able to be creative in all areas of the ice. So whether you're on the offense, on the defense, or playing, with AI teammates or who are on or against you, on your team or playing against you, we want to make sure that you had all the tools, to pull off new deeks, but also defend against them, and then see your AI teammates, pull off those same moves as well. One thing that we'll talk a bit about today is the timing of these kind of new fancy moves. I think even a few years ago, when you weren't seeing as many of these moves getting pulled off, night in, night out by real players in NHL, we might have been seen as, oh, that's what you do when you're up 6-1 and you're trying to show off. So it's not really authentic to the sport. But now with all these highlights, with these new players pulling these moves off, regularly at full speed again, it kind of became a much more integrated part of our game, and you're actually using those moves to create opportunity and open up ice for you and your teammates. So that is kind of the key part of the creative attack deeks, in terms of the shooting and passing lanes, and then changing the way that you attack the zone. And then creative, defense. Obviously, for our core community, the defensive skill stick, has been requested for a very long time. For myself, I was very excited to have that feature, happen this year. It changed the way I play defense. So we'll talk a bit about that in a bit as well. And then lastly, creative AI, which really, to be honest, kind of the surprising piece that came out of the plan this year. We started looking at, okay, what are the smarter ways for your AI teammates to move the puck, pass the puck out of the zone, etc. What ended up happening was, we made all these changes in behaviors that your AI teammates are now much smarter. Not only are they pulling off the moves that you're able to pull off, but in terms of making intelligent decisions with passing the puck in open space, making more intelligent bank passes coming out of their zone, giving you more options. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. So just a short clip. You guys might have seen this, but our gameplay trailer that came out about a month ago, so around the time of the beta. So maybe you'll recognize Ben's voice.
Do you want to just click it on mute and then I can speak to it as it goes through?
Yeah.
So apologies for some of the audio hiccups here. We swapped the HDMI in for the Xbox, and now that's somehow ruined the playback on our audio. But if you can imagine for a moment that I am Ben Ross, who is our gameplay producer back home at EA Vancouver, Ben would be telling you about sort of 4 key components that are different in gameplay this year. Clem just talked about 3 of them, and those are creative attack deking, creative controls on defense, which is mainly highlighted by the defensive skill stick, creative artificial intelligence, and then last but not least, the addition of authentic 3-on-3 added to our EA Sports Hockey League mode, which is our online team play mode. So starting with deeks, as you can see in the clips as we go, the big point that Clem just made was if we were to add stuff like between the legs shooting into our game, even sort of 3-4 years ago, some of our core fans, some of the guys like you guys here would have said, "What are you guys doing? Like, that's so arcadey. Like, that's not authentic. You don't see that happening." But the reality is, you do see this happening. It's no longer a situation where 3 years ago Thomas Hurdle might score a between the legs deke because he's winning 7-1. But players are nightly using these types of moves strategically now and at full speed, which is really sort of changing the game. Clem talked about a little bit about defensive skill stick, and that's sort of the big game changer there is independent control of your stick, to do things like target poke checks, to keep your stick extended, to sweep a zone, to cover actual zone coverage with a single player, and most importantly, to be able to have independent control of your lower body and your upper body. So if players are attacking a wing, you can use your body to position them off while keeping your stick extended to make sure that you're closing off passing lanes. And then Clem mentioned creative AI. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind the clips here. But one of the big things was sort of rebuilding the AI passing mechanics from the ground up. So in previous years, one of the biggest hindrances of our AI was if the AI was making a pass and making a decision on how to pass and when to pass, they would only look for direct lanes. So if I was trying to make a pass to Clem and there was a defender between us, our AI would think that pass is not available and it would look for another player. In rebuilding from the ground up, as you can see in these clips, they no longer think that way. They will assess one of a variety of different options, including looking at the boards, looking to pass into space, through passing, similar to what you've seen in FIFA. And they'll look for creative opportunities to get the puck to a player while not thinking, oh, there's a defender there, this lane is no longer available to me. So you can see, like in this clip here, the human control player called for a pass. The AI didn't send it directly to him, but dropped it into space behind him for the human control player to skate onto. That's something that in previous NHL games, we just haven't had the sophistication in our artificial intelligence games to be able to do. And what we've found, particularly in beta feedback, was that it's improving not only the passing schemes, but it's improving player positioning overall, because you're not looking for open lanes, which you had to do in previous games in order to connect the pass, but you can actually get smarter about where you're choosing to break out, which areas you're choosing to skate into, and expect the AI to get the puck to you. And then finally, we kind of breezed through it, but EA Sports Hockey League and bringing authentic 3-on-3 to that. So it's slightly confusing, but we have two different components of 3-on-3 added to NHL 18 this year. There's the EA Sports Hockey League version, which is authentic 3-on-3, which means full rink, full ice, and our typical competitive gameplay controls. And we find that this is sort of one of the most gravitated to areas and modes and experiences from our core fans. For those of you that don't know what EA Sports Hockey League is, or does anybody not know what EA Sports Hockey League is? Everyone? Okay, so it is our online team play mode. And one of the best experiences that I believe you can have in NHL is to have a full 6v6 match where everybody on the ice is human controlled. And that's typically what our core fans sort of scream for in terms of like finding a really authentic team-based hockey experience. But when we sort of look at the data and the insights from how people look and play at EASHL, the majority of people actually only have 2 to 3 players on their team, meaning that they're always having AI complete their teams with an additional 2 to 3 players, depending on which team. So not only was bringing authentic 3-on-3 important to us in terms of mirroring what's going on in the real world NHL with 3-on-3 overtime, but it was important to give more players an opportunity to get fully controlled human matches without having to coordinate 5 other friends to be all online at the same time. And so we expect this to actually become one of the more competitive arenas where players are sort of trying to balance risk versus reward gameplay, where you are trying to show off your skill, use the open ice, use skill moves without necessarily giving up too much space behind you, where you're getting a little bit risky on defense and giving up goal scoring opportunities.
Cool. Great job, by the way, Ben Ross.
Thank you.
He'd be proud of you.
Thanks.
So next, that's kind of a good segue, because we talked about threes. You guys have played it, obviously. One of the things that we wanted to do was, and I mentioned this earlier, kind of reach out, hopefully to a new audience, but more importantly, build a brand new game mode that was, differentiated from our typical sim experience, right? So what I mean is a faster game pace. Players are faster, bigger, stronger, with bigger hitting, scoring bigger goals. We looked at things like the size of the ice, the rules, like do we need rules? Do we need face-offs? What about penalties? So what you guys have seen in the beta is kind of culmination of all that. But basically this is what we started off with, was we wanted to be fast, we wanted to be shareable, we wanted to be pick up hockey that was really accessible for maybe fans that maybe haven't even played our game in years. Maybe they're a casual hockey fan, but they're not a traditional gamer. So that's kind of where we started with this concept. But where we actually landed was with an experience that is still very competitive if you're playing with equally skilled players. And we've seen a lot of that feedback, like Evan mentioned, from the beta, where very core guys, playing esports, like much like a lot of you guys in this room, picked up threes, played it, and were like, hey, this could be a mode for me when I take a break, or maybe play with friends who may not play esports hockey league. And there's actually a good way to introduce them to NHL as something I can share with them. So that's where we kind of prioritize. We need an authentic component within EA Sports Hockey League, obviously, for that display of creativity. But what we're really looking for in threes as kind of our key goals was an experience where, kind of transcend the sport, much like the NHL, 93, 94 experiences, games like NBA Jam, NFL Street. You didn't necessarily have to be a fan of those sports to enjoy those games. And that, I think based on kind of feedback we saw from the early feedback we saw from beta, threes was our most played mode, and based on the fact that, when we went to the open beta, a lot of, casual fans came in and said, I actually really enjoy, I can see myself playing this experience on a Friday night, having drinks with my buddy, having them over, or, just playing as a casual experience. So that was, that's kind of this is our expression of the new NHL. I mean, the smaller ice, as you see, kind of more colorful environment, kind of greater emphasis on scoring goals, and that's why things like adding depth through different modes, so various ways to play online, offline, things like the money puck, that was very important for us to add that depth. Obviously, when you make an investment like threes, we didn't want it to be a one and done. We want it to be something that if you came in, you enjoyed the experience, you could stay there, and play day after day and week after week. I think what people will draw parallels to in terms of a previous arcade experience with 3-on-3 arcade, we didn't really want it to be that, where it was kind of, hey, it was a novel game mode, but it was kind of a bit of a shallow experience, right? So next is just again a quick clip for you guys. I'll play through without sound, but we had released this trailer a couple weeks ago.
Probably click unmute on that one. Clem mentioned sort of, thinking about building an experience that transcends the sports a little bit. And we have a program at EA Vancouver called Game Changers, which is started at NHL 16, and basically it's a community of some of our core players who were elected by the wider player base to represent them. And they're brought into the EA Vancouver studio between 4 and 5 times a year to help us think about what concepts we want to build, help feedback on the ideas that we do have, help tune the game as it gets built. So they're very involved in the development process, and they typically tend to be pretty core in terms of their fandom. So the very first time that we showed them NHL 3s, we sort of sat them down and we walked them through the concept at a high level before we had started building the game. And we said, what do you think? And they all went, that's not for me. And it was understandable, because those are their fans that typically want a pretty hardcore simulation experience. And so we said, okay, and we sort of talked about what they would like to see from it, and they left. And then we brought them back about a month and a half later when we actually had it fully concepted, but not yet playable. And we showed them the full fleshed out idea, and they all sort of said, like, okay, like, I kind of see where you're going. I don't think I'm gonna play it very much, but I can see, my friend that doesn't play NHL coming over to my house, and maybe I'll play that mode with him. We said, okay, and then we talked about it a little bit more. They left. They came back another 2 months later when the game was finally playable, right before we hit alpha. And they got their hands on it, and they sort of said, okay, yeah, actually, it is fun. I see this as the mode that I might play from 2 to 4 a.m. when I want to decompress a little bit. And we said, okay, and they gave us some more feedback, we talked about it, they left. And then they came back for the 4th time that year, just before beta went live, and we wanted them to come in and help tune some of the mechanics, some of the controls and the game balance before beta went live to a wider consumer base. And at that point, it was the mode that they all played the absolute most, and they didn't want to stop playing it. So I think what we found, both through that and through our beta experience, is that when sort of more skilled players do get matched up in threes, there is a sort of different metagame and a different strategy that happens. And so I don't think we necessarily saw it as something that was going to become super competitive for our core players, but that's actually where the mode has gone a little bit. So we've definitely seen a split in terms of new players sort of finding a little bit of a soft landing spot in terms of getting into the NHL for the first time, as well as hardcore players getting in and finding it to be like a super competitive experience that they're likening a lot to Rocket League in terms of very simplistic to jump into, but once you get skilled, once you're very good at the game, there's a lot of depth to sort of master.
Cool. One of the things I mentioned earlier, so kind of the third pillar for us was obviously bring the Vegas franchise to life. Obviously one of the most requested features in terms of league expansion. So we're excited this year to, not only let our players, kind of take. Sorry, I'm in your way. It's kind of awkward. Here's the pillar. But I'll also let you play as the 32nd team alongside Vegas through the expansion draft. Really being part, like I mentioned earlier, being part of that sports conversation where it's older news now, but for fans seeing the jerseys, the team, the roster, the first time in the arenas, that was really exciting for us. But I think my favorite experience is actually playing through the 32nd team, where you get to select any from a large number of cities. And see how you can challenge yourself to kind of complete that fantasy for your hometown or your favorite city.
Quick note on that too is you can, if you do draft a 32nd expansion team, you can choose a European location for the first time. So you can actually bring a NHL team into the league in Europe, which we've never been able to do before.
Lastly, we talked about multiplayer. So this year we really went big in terms of the number of combinations you can have. In past NHLs, kind of in line with other sports games, you can, play head-to-head online. You can have one guest. I'm not gonna spoil it because I have a little quick clip. It's gonna be hard to hear the audio, but the gist of it is you can literally daisy chain a number of local and online head-to-head or cooperative experiences across all our modes this year. Obviously with the exception for EA Sports Hockey League, because that's still a kind of OTP online team play experience, but in all the leagues, online versus HUT, threes obviously, you can play a number of ways as you'll see in the video.
This is the new world of multiplayer in NHL 18. You can play on the couch with a friend, or online with a friend on the same team, or online against a friend, or on the couch with a friend playing against another friend online, or maybe three of those friends are on a couch playing with a fourth friend online, or maybe you and your buddy are on the couch playing with two other buddies on a couch with two other buddies online, all on the same team, against two other friends on a couch that are teamed up with four guys online, or maybe, okay, you get it. When we add up all the combinations, there are 64 different ways to play multiplayer in NHL 18. No other sports title offers this many ways to get into the game with your friends, either cooperatively or competitively.
That was a bit hard to hear, but the heads that you saw bouncing there were all executives within EA, which we thought might be fun to get them into the game. But the gist of the multiplayer feature is, to Clem's point, in previous NHL games, adding a friend into your experience, other than in EA Sports Hockey League, was not always a seamless experience. You could go into online versus and sort of add in a local friend with you in a menu, and some other modes that allowed you to do that, but we had too many barriers up in terms of bringing a friend into an experience the way you wanted to bring them in, whether that was like two buddies with you on a couch and a third buddy online and you all wanted to play on the same team. Like, that stuff wasn't possible before. And so the idea with more multiplayer combinations this year was really just kind of tearing down any barriers that players have to team up with their friends in the way that they want to, whether that's local, whether it's online, whether it's a combination of the two, whatever you can really think of is now possible in the game.
One thing I'd imagine what it was like to test that for our Deadline QA team. It's crazy. Last but not least, obviously, we talked about the game changers, but we, also kind of the core fan feedback is very important to us as well. So with the breadth and depth that we're adding, obviously, actually one that's quite exciting. is kind of the ability to make a trade request and be a pro. So in previous years, you weren't able to request a trade. Now you still have to kind of play through a number of games and make sure that you're successful and reach certain milestones before you can request a trade. But that was one of the things we're able to kind of add to bolster that experience for be a pro fans. We talked about franchise mode league expansion. Contract extension is another big one. So we've added the ability now when you start a new season, if you have a player who's on the last year of their contract, from the get-go, so from the off season, you have the ability to engage with them to renegotiate their contract and sign them to a new contract essentially that follows all the same rules, all the same kind of union rules as the real NHL. So that's quite exciting. HUT solo challenges. So for those of you that play in Madden, it's a very similar system. One of the interesting things, so our unique kind of take on it is adding co-op challenges. So as I mentioned earlier, you're able to kind of invite friends to play with you cooperatively in HUT. You can do that for any number of challenges, but we also have specific challenges that require you to then bring a friend into your HUT experience before you can complete those. So that's going to be unique, new and unique to us as well. Presentation camera views, perhaps one of the most underrated additions to the game this year, but I think our fans who play day in, day out would appreciate the most. We've added, I should know this number, we've added 3,500 hand-tuned cameras, so off-play broadcast cameras between face-offs, after penalty calls to each arena. And I say handcrafted because we place these unique camera angles per arena. So imagine how much work that was for our team and how much testing effort that went in. But really it kind of adds a new experience to even arenas that you may have seen in game last year. Really kind of bring that broadcast experience to life. Last but not least, I mentioned as part of the franchise expansion, you're able to enter as a 30-second team. As part of that, you can also create your mascot. So adding in the create mascot functionality to our existing creation zone feature set, was also asked from our core community. So it took a bit longer than I had promised, but that's kind of the NHL 18 kind of key features. I think right now we're gonna start jumping into the gameplay sessions, interviews. So we'll definitely do a deeper dive in our chats today.
So like I said, please respect the capture restrictions. If you're not sure about anything, please just ask. There are 6 PlayStation stations open over along the wall. We also have an Xbox here with 6 controllers so that you can play full human controlled 3v3 on one screen, which is a lot of fun. We were playing earlier and yelling pretty loud. So up to you whether you want to play solo or 1v1 on one of the PlayStation consoles, or here in sort of a larger match. We can coordinate something and get it going. And then I think there's an interview schedule as well, but if you have questions outside or inside the interview schedule, please just grab one of us and ask.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, guys.